Hello there, this is Sohail Hasni, your host at Energypreneurs. Cheap solar power, batteries, and electric vehicles are changing the transport and energy sector as we know. I bring in guests to this podcast who will help you with their ideas to navigate this energy transition. Thank you for joining. Hi, Shazia. Good evening from Manila.
Hi, good morning from Washington, D.C.
Wow, far away. I know you have done so many exciting things, and I'm surprised that we last met was 2017. Oh my God. Maybe you introduce yourself first.
Yes, I would love to. It's so great to see you after so many years. The last time I saw you was in 2017 at a conference in Batumi, Georgia. Since then, I've done a lot of things. So I'll give you a very brief overview of my background. My name is Shazia Khan. I was a longtime founder of a company called Eco Energy. It was the first pay-as-you-go solar company in Pakistan, the largest pay-as-you-go solar company in Pakistan. We made the first acquisition in the energy access space when we acquired a Norwegian company, Brighter Light. We did a number of projects with the World Bank, GIZ, RBF programs. And then I launched a company called Eco Energy Global in 2017. And that company was more focused, getting a little bit away from rural electrification to work on the urban problem of energy access. We did a lot of work with SMEs, productive use energy installations, commercial and industrial installations. We also piloted an interesting project that I'm excited to talk to you about. It was called Dosti, and it was a peer-to-peer energy sharing platform. We won an award for that from the Startup Energy Transition, and it died on the vine because I couldn't get enough money generated from my core business to make this foray into R&D. And so we had a great team, we had awards, we had a location, we had a partnership with the LUMS University to provide the hardware while we were developing the software, and we couldn't get it going. That really forced me to take a step back and figure out what the problems are that startups have. I left Eco Energy last year and I moved into the chairman of the board position. I also sit on the board of an e-mobility company called Zed Motors, based in Benin, but doing work across sub-Saharan Africa. I also sit on the board of a venture capital fund called Start Equity Ventures that makes tech investments. My day job is that I work for a boutique energy access consulting firm called Catalyst Energy Advisors. And what Catalyst does is we have clients, a number of our clients are investors that want us to go and build a pipeline in certain companies for energy access companies to thrive, survive, and get funded. We also work more directly with the investors themselves to understand what their challenges are, what their pain points are. There's been a lot of shift and transition in the field of ESG. A lot of impact investors even are turning away from ESG just because it didn't provide the returns that they needed to show the LPs that they were accountable to. I've also worked on some other projects that catalyzed. We worked with GAP to figure out how we can advise country governments to understand what is it going to take to electrify the last mile locations within Latin American countries. And as there's only 22 million people left to electrify across all of Latin America. So it's pretty exciting for me, having worked in a silo in Pakistan for so long, and then getting to work on the Africa problem. And it's 600 million people or 580 million people now that don't have any power. So is there a light at the end of this tunnel? We're definitely not going to make this by 2030. But then to shift gears and to be able to work in Latin America and see, actually, it's only 22 million people left and they could do this, especially because the government has the will to do it. So that is the work that I do. I'm a capital connector. I'm an advisor. I'm an investor myself. And I sit on a number of boards. So that is what I've been doing since Eco Energy and since I saw you last.
Yes, I'm quite intrigued with another data I recently found out about Pakistan's rooftop solar, like a huge 2.6 gigawatt or 26 gigawatt. I forgot it from the top of my head, but it's a significant number. And your company must have been part of,
Yes and no. I think the most interesting news to come out of Pakistan is that so many people installed solar privately that the surge of excess power generated, and it basically wiped out the national grid. Like it tanked the national grid's ability to be financially sustainable because the electricity tariffs were increased so much that people just started saying, well, I'm just going to get solar and produce my own power. The only people that could afford to do that were rich people, right? And they really put the national grid in danger. I think this is a cautionary tale about how national governments need to be working more closely with the providers of decentralized clean energy solutions and integrate them into a national plan. They cannot be operating separately because otherwise, if it's cheaper for somebody to get solar, they're going to do it on their own. And there's a lot more people that could get solar, but actually only about 2.5% of all solar in Pakistan was financed. Only rich people are able to do it without financing. But if we want to reach last mile rural areas, there needs to be some combination of subsidy, blended finance, patient capital. So I'm excited to get into all of that. I'm excited to get into all of the innovations across the energy access space. And thank you for providing me with a platform to talk about this.
One thing is solar has become so cheap. This is not going to be just a developing country problem. Poor people pay more for electricity as than the rich. It's always been because they buy the most inefficient appliances, they have the shortest network, and they buy in small chunk, and they ultimately pay more. I have a lot of different views about the grid, especially as home batteries coming in and becoming so much cheaper. The future of grid, especially into distribution, high density area, is a big question mark, right?
Absolutely. And one of the coolest innovations that has come about, which will mark a real democratization and a big shift in the way that people consume energy, is that there are now these peer-to-peer energy sharing networks. And like I said, we tried to do this with Dosti and it died on the vine because we couldn't get the funding. But a couple of other companies have been able to do it successfully. And I really have to admire them. An example of this is a company called SoulShare in Bangladesh, another company which you know about because they've done a project in the Philippines as well as Cambodia and a couple of African countries. Sorry, that's Okra, and then SoulShare is in Bangladesh.
Yep. I also interviewed SoulShare in this platform.
You did. Oh, and I think that is going to be the future of energy because there's something that is got to sit between solar home systems, which are cheaper for sure, are largely more plug and play and can be set up smartly and can pretty much install themselves. But that is really not going to give you that much power. The mini grid is sitting on the other end. Mini grids are smarter. They're also plug and play now. They use Homer for planning, for feasibility studies. But something's got to sit in the middle, but it's pretty expensive still. Consumers, especially ones that have never had power before, might not be using it to the level that the mini grid needs them to be using it. They might not be consuming to the level that the mini grid needs them to in order for it to make that financially viable. So what's going to sit in the middle and what I think the future is are these peer-to-peer energy sharing networks, which are using blockchain. And as you know, from interviewing SoulShare, these peer-to-peer energy sharing networks are taking a number of households and putting them on a grid, and they're sharing power amongst themselves using smart metering, mobile money payment, and they're doing these transactions in real time. I think there's going to be a blockchain play here to make it a lot more seamless and to separate it out even further from the financial payment system. But to me, that's really exciting. So peer-to-peer energy sharing networks, it's a completely different way. Instead of being a consumer, you're a prosumer. You are producing your own power and you're sharing it. That's a real democratization. And that's where I see the future is. And then the other thing I'm really excited about is e-mobility, which I know that you're excited about too.
But yeah, on this peer-to-peer, I also did not agree with the CEO of the SoulShare at the time. And personally, what I'm seeing as batteries becoming cheaper, you can carry a 10 kilowatt hour battery almost in a hand or a suitcase with a trolley bag. And a lot of these consumers don't consume much, 2-3 kilowatt hours.
Right.
So if they can have their whole week's on a suitcase, and that can go into an e-mobility tricycle or something, I think rather than building a grid, which is a fixed network, I might as well charge my suitcase and swap that. I mean, we are working on a concept is that you put all those battery swap facilities at school and you can provide incentive. People do projects saying the girls must have incentive, that a family must send the girls to school. So you can
Oh,
all
sorry.
take the suitcase, plunk it in, it gets charged and you get free electricity. You connect the home. So you have a motivation to send them to school. And these are so cheap to set up. So I personally not sure the word greed ultimately will come to areas where there is no greed, because batteries will fill up the space. It's almost like what Wi-Fi did for networking, no? So anyway, and that's the view I have.
Yeah, and actually a number of schools had done that. I was in a cohort a number of years ago with an Indian woman who had, I think it's one light per student or something like that. A number of them have this similar concept where you're incentivizing the students to go and get electricity to bring back to their family. I don't think ultimately that is going to be enough power.
No, maybe not, because what has happened though? Now you can get a 1 or 2 kilowatt. I actually have a system right now in my balcony somewhere, which is just like a tissue box size. So that's 1 kilowatt hour.
It's a
So
lot of power.
to these people, it may not be for you
Right.
living in Basi or New York or somebody in Sydney, but for those small houses, that's a lot of power. And if you can carry it with you, and it's the cheapest option, just plunk it in and it works. It's almost like a rural Afghanistan. I've seen people all carrying water buckets, right? So similar. But anyway, so we can discuss on.
But the question, I think, will still come down to, it doesn't really matter how amazing a technology is. It's not financially viable, right? Because there's only so much grant funding.
1 kilowatt hour battery right now is $100. It will cost $100 to put the cables and the peer-to-peer network and the infrastructure to measure.
So they are going to pay for it themselves, or does it need to be financed for them? Is the company going to finance it for them that's selling it to them?
Battery swaps, that's what a lot of people are doing, right? For tricycles and others. So yeah, it needs to be some subscription, something, but it would be still cheaper than building a grid.
Anyway, to me, the point is that there's a lot of great innovations in the space, and there will continue to be, and prices will continue to come down for all these components. What I'm most concerned about is, what are these innovations? How can we support them and get them into the market? And how can we give them the support that they need to become robust financially? How can they diversify their revenue streams so that they're not wholly reliant on the DFIs or on impact investors that are largely going away? So
Yeah.
I've been encouraging the companies that I work with to not make some of the mistakes that I did. I did begin to diversify my revenue streams at Eco Energy, but I did it too late. I did it after we had a World Bank RBF program collapse in a correction scandal. We lost a $12 million contract that I needed. And so that's what caused me to shift and do a pivot into CNI, into PUE, into urban residential, which I never really cared about, but I needed to do something in order to be financially viable. And so that's the kind of support or advice that I'm giving to the companies that I work with in the enterprise development support network. Really, what is it going to take for you to build a viable business and to attract investment? Because even the impact investors don't care if you're creating a great social impact, if you don't have a business that's going to return and you give an ROI to their investors who they're ultimately accountable for. So it's been pretty exciting for me to be able to take a step back from the silo that I'm working in and to get closer to the investors and understand what their challenges are and who they're accountable to, and to help them raise the funding that they need. And then on the other hand, to continue working with entrepreneurs who, like me, are building the same exact company that I built. But I can say to them, this is how you set up the company so that it can have money flow in and out. When you're in a challenging market in a developing country that regularly freezes assets or puts holds or makes repatriation of funding difficult, it makes you very unattractive to an investor if you're working in a country like that. So how do you structure yourself and create an umbrella company somewhere else where money can flow in and out safely? And then I do a lot of work on, okay, if you do run into trouble because you've taken on debt on the basis of a contract, how do you restructure that debt in a responsible way with your lenders and what you need to build out operationally in order to ensure that you're able to deliver on services to all of these last mile customers or PUE or SMEs that are counting on you. Yeah, it's been a very fun couple of years, I would say. After getting out of the slog of being an entrepreneur and getting so beat up, it's been really nice to take a step back and have a consulting job and be able to advise entrepreneurs that are not paying me, that don't have to pay me. Somebody else is footing the bill, but to be able to say, hey, here are all of the things that can go wrong. And here are all of the workarounds that it took me many years to learn. So yeah, it's been pretty fun.
Now, the other big fun chapter that you just mentioned in the passing, that e-mobility, what are you doing? You must have been doing something very exciting on that front as well, no?
So I'm sure it's not that different than what you're doing. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the e-mobility space. So being invited onto the board of Zed Motors for me was a really good opportunity to get up close and personal with what the challenges are. And I mainly help them with strategy around their business model, thinking about their go-to-market strategy, who their first customers are going to be. And as e-bikes have basically achieved parity with traditional fuel-based motorcycle. So in the country that I'm working in, it costs about $500 to buy an e-bike and costs about $500 to buy a regular bike. The cost of gasoline continues to go up or fluctuates. And so the e-bike is a really great innovation because it costs about the same to buy, but where are you going to charge it? People don't want to buy it if they don't know where to charge it. And so we have a company that's built the charging infrastructure, battery swap station. They built a number of them. They want to build more. We're trying to get them money so that they can build more. But until we have like a Tesla level of superchargers available all over where people can feel comfortable buying these bikes, that's not going to happen. So what we need is early adopters. The companies that we've been working with are fleet operators that we're convincing to wholesale buy a fleet of these new bikes. But we have to offer supercharging stations nearby so that when they send out their vehicles, mainly for food delivery services, some ride sharing, that they have a place to charge. So it's been really cool for me to be able to get a ground level view of what the challenges are of setting up a company like this and trying to get the product market fit, trying to get the customers that it needs to go. And most importantly, figuring out how much money are we going to make? Is this an investable opportunity? Are we going to be able to make a return to our investors? What does the timeline look like? Not 3 years, closer to 7 to 10 years, probably. But while I'm working with them, I'm also keeping an eye on other companies that are doing e-mobility, primarily in Africa, but I'm also interested in Asia as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you're working on with your e-mobility cohort and what's happening in Asia.
Zed Motors, how many vehicles are they operating right now?
So they have only produced, I think, about 120 and about 7 charging stations that they're looking to set up right now. So there's a long way to go. Actually, they had a grant that they received from USAID that they lost when the Trump administration came into power. And so this is a challenge for a lot of the entrepreneurs that I'm working with in sub-Saharan Africa, is that the grant funding has dried up. Certainly a lot of grant funding that came from USAID. There are other DFIs that are working in the space, obviously mostly in Europe, a little bit now in the Middle East and in Asia, but we cannot rely on grant funding or even the DFIs. I think these entrepreneurs cannot. And so they really need to start diversifying their revenue streams now so that they can withstand these really cold periods where grant funding is dried up, even grant funding that was pledged to them.
Also, some of these things really don't need grant funding anymore. If you look closely, they have a very good business models and other. The prices have come down so much, right?
Yes, the
Solar
prices have come
cells,
down.
batteries. If someone rationally compare with the incumbent, as you exactly said, the same price, like electric vehicle, if you compare in the Philippines, just now, a lot of BYDs, Teslas coming in, and people ask, and you compare side by side, oh, okay, it is actually cheaper. Because I think that the problem is educating and educating people That's where the challenge is. People still think everything is expensive. I met one gentleman the other day and he said, Tesla battery only lasts 5 years. I said, where did you find that? He said, I heard from Musk. I said, can you point me to that fact? He said, no, I can't. I said, please, if you don't, if you can't, don't talk about it. And he was looking at me, what do you mean? I said, I know enough to tell you that this is not correct. Please don't talk about it. Because he's, are you sure? I said, yes, absolutely sure. These batteries last 7,000 hours, 10,000 cycles, and 5 years. Even a good lead acid battery lasts 5 years. So a lot of misinformation, disinformation going on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a much longer life. We've been servicing customers with batteries, lithium ion and lead acid. The lead acid batteries are still going, to be honest with you. And we've been servicing customers for 15 years. So the lead acid batteries need to be replaced, but the lithium ion batteries have a longer life. And the fact of the matter is that the prices keep on coming down for batteries. So even if you have to do a battery replacement, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, batteries are so cheap. When I did a e-trike project just maybe a few years before we met, it was $1,200, $1,300 a kilowatt hour. Now it's $80, $60. Price keep going down.
Keep on going down as there's innovation from battery technology too. I agree with you. The cost more and the reliance or over-reliance on grant or subsidy or DFI funding has been more because it takes any startup some time to do a little bit of R&D to get the product market fit right, to figure out what their go-to-market strategy is going to be, to figure out what their operational growth strategy looks like to support the scale. But that's true for any startup in any space. But once you've overcome that and you're at the point where you can actually accept seed funding, you've already have a rock solid business plan by then, right? You've already achieved some measure of financial sustainability or scalability within 1 to 3 years. So yeah, I agree with you.
My takeaway from this, the amount of time people spend chasing grant, if they spend the same time chasing the correct people to be on the team, it would be a much robust business plan. Okay, you can write a proposal, let's work together, get this grant, then we'll do the project. No need. If you get the right people, if you do the numbers properly, because everything is so cheap, the technology that we need to address climate change is here. Connect with the right people and just do it.
Exactly right. And there are investors in the space that are interested, and there's new funds coming up every day. This investment fund that I'm working with, Start Equity Ventures, we just started a little bit over a year and a half ago and have raised a good amount of money and have deployed 50% of it and have made dozens of investments. New funds are coming up every day. And I'd be happy to talk with you more about that offline. There's great projects out there that need to be funded and the investors are interested, but some work needs to be done on the business modeling, on packaging and preparing this idea. And that's where I think bridge builders like me can come in. So I raised $5 million for Eco Energy in debt and quasi equity. And then it only got me to $1 million in revenue quickly. But in a country like Pakistan, that's a lot of money. And I could have been able to scale it if I got to the next level, but it was a difficult regulatory environment. And also I was just exhausted. So for me, the ability to work with dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs has been really great because all I'm doing is helping them to package, to work on their business modeling, work on the strategic planning, package everything up, and then connect them to funders that are waiting, twiddling their thumbs, looking for investable opportunities, actually.
Where do you get all this energy? Tell me. I like the energy that you're bringing.
It's a combination. Yoga, walking in nature, half calf, cappuccino, a lot of vitamins. So passion for my work, actually. It's been almost 25 years and I'm still excited about the space. So I'm grateful for that.
That's true. I'm just revving up. Retired from one transition. I'm transitioning. I'm just revving up. So I will have the energy, your level maybe in a couple of years' time.
Actually, you've done quite a bit. You've done so much across Asia. You've done so much interesting and innovative work. So it's really a pleasure to be here and to catch up with you too, actually, and see what other people have been working on. And I was happy to hear that you left ADB. I know you did great work there, but I'm excited to see what your next chapter is too. So it's a new chapter for both of us.
Yes. What's your take on AI and agents? How is that impacting your work today? It's scary, and at the same time, it's wow. Still, every time I use a new one, and I'm just thinking, wow, what's going on?
I cannot believe you brought up this topic. This is one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
So a lot of the investments that we are making with the venture capital fund are tech-based investments. So I'll take a step back and I'll tell you my personal experience. Is that I like a deal with myself, and I said, I'm very interested in learning about AI and seeing it in 2024, I can identify 5 to 10 different AI tools. And then by 2025, I can integrate them seamlessly into my own life and work streams. And I'll tell you about the ones that I came across that I use a lot. So some are for fun, some are for work. So the first one obviously is ChatGPT, which I use a lot. But also I use these others, and I use an acronym, Mrs. G. M is Mid Journey. That is text to image. Then there is Runway. Runway is text to video. Then there is Suno. That's a fun one. That is text to song. It's pretty fun.
Okay, that I don't know. Okay, text to song.
And then the last one, which you've probably heard of, is Gamma, which I use all the time for everything. Gamma is text to presentation, text to document, text to website. It doesn't make a great website, but it's good enough. What I really love about AI is that, like how the internet was a democratization of access to information, AI is a democratization, is a tool of cognition, right? And it's giving everyone access to this tool of cognition. And people might be a little bit afraid of it because they think, oh, it's taking over, it's making me lose the ability to think critically. But it's actually not. It's just leveling the playing field and making it possible for anybody with a great idea to go from idea to execution. Because this tool is being used to do all of the executive functioning that you might not be capable of, or that you might be afraid of, or that you might have some other blocks around. I'm very excited for this revolution. I've been a big proponent of technology for most of my 25 years, my career, and I will continue to be. And so the question is not, is this replacing humans? No. Is this technology allowing humans to do things that have just been sitting in the innermost recesses of their mind and actually helping them to bring them to fruition? And I've used them. I'll tell you about just a couple of personal projects that I'm working on. I wrote my dad's memoirs last year. It was the only thing he's ever asked me for. He said, I don't want people to forget my story. I used it to help write his memoirs. I did hours and hours of interviews with him about his life, about family history. That was really great. I actually used a book writing service for that called No Story Lost, but I organized a lot of my work. I did a lot of the transcriptions for the interviews that I did using AI tools. It helped me to organize my work and get things done more quickly. And then I have another project that I've been working on since 2007. So in 2007, I watched a documentary on National Geographic about the mapping of the human genome. It was called like the Genographic Project. You know about this project, right? And so from that, they said at the end of this program, if anybody wants to send in a DNA sample, and my husband was like, that's crazy. You don't know what they're going to do with that. And I'm like, I'm not worried about it. What are they going to do? Clone me? Awesome. The world needs way more people with my level of enthusiasm and confidence and passion and grit.
And he's a doctor, right?
He's a doctor, yeah. I sent that in and I was able to find out my mtDNA, my mitochondrial DNA. This is the maternal gene that's passed down, but it was only able to tell me U4. The field of archaeogenetics and of genetics has advanced so much in the last 15 years that I got it all the way to U4A1. And I found all these very interesting things about my family history, and I've mapped my entire family history for the last 70,000 years out of Africa, all the way up through the Middle East, up to the Baltic, down through Central Asia, and to a mountain town in Pakistan, the 1700s. So that's been really interesting. And I figured out all the archaeological sites where there's DNA that matches my family genetics. And I'm going to take my kids on a trip. And I started by going to the Arctic Circle and to the Baltic and doing a cold dip in the Baltic Sea. in January. I wouldn't have been able to do this without AI. And it's like, I'd been thinking about this and trying to map this out so diligently, so hard. And then I got down to the end, and between 23andMe and ChatGPT, I figured it all out in a month. It was amazing. And then the last project that I'm working on is I've got an antique collection of coins that were traded along the Silk Road. I inherited it from my uncle as a wedding gift. And then he died, and I was like, I'd like to do something with this coin collection. And so I have this coin collection of about 100 coins, a collection I've been growing over the last 7 years. I got authenticated. I've added to 50%. And it's coins traded along the Silk Road from 200 BC to the 1300s. And I also went to an archaeological site that was just barely excavated in Pakistan in 2001. And I went there and I just with my hands dug a little bit and found some things, and I turned them over to the caretaker. It was this old Pakistani guard, and he's like, just keep it. Nobody cares about this stuff. And I was like, is this illegal? Nobody cares. And nobody wants that. I had some pottery shards. I had some coin molds. I found 2 antique coins, and I found a hoop earring. I'll show them to you next time. But anyway, but I couldn't find out any information about it. Fast forward to 2012, then this site was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is the ancient city of Barbaricon on the Silk Road from 100 BC up through the 1200. And I was able to last weekend, in one weekend, catalog all of these treasures, archaeological treasures that I found, like Indiana Jones, digging in the dirt, and all of my coins and my uncle's coins. And I did it in a weekend. I cataloged, it took me like 18 hours, but it was able to identify even the roughest. And I used also an app called CoinSnap. But even the
What's
roughest.
that name of the app? Because I have a lot of my collections. The first coin, maybe when I was 3 years old, somebody gave. I have a lot of very ancient one. I don't know what they are. And this has been a project in back of my head. I think it's still here somewhere, that I should post it somewhere and get valuation. There's a lot of
It's going to tell you everything. You're going to take a picture with your iPhone, a very good picture. You're going to put it in a ChatGPT and be like, tell me what this is. Tell me how much it's worth.
That's what I plan to do. Now you have given me that inspiration.
I was using CoinSnap, but then I just tried ChatGPT and it was able to identify pottery shards from 100 BC down to the glaze, down to the usage. It's crazy. So this project has been knocking around in my head from 2001, then picked up in 2007, and I did it in 18 hours. Crazy. And I'm going to publish it in a coffee table book. I want to do a podcast on the Silk Road. And then I want to set up a virtual museum and then a permanent or a temporary museum collection in one of the Smithsonian. So I'm talking to one of the curators right now, one of the Smithsonians. But how can just any layperson do this, do all of this with this AI? It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, I got that idea. I think I was in London with my daughter's apartment, and she said, Dad, there is a dad task. There's some little part sitting there. Find out what it is. And I said, I don't know. Then eventually we took a photo. She uploaded into the chat GPT. And this seems like a part of a dishwasher. Give me the model of your dishwasher, and it give the technical drawing. This is where it fits. And I was like, wow. Okay, maybe I should do my coin. So now you have given me the inspiration.
Yeah, you work this weekend and tell me what you found. That's awesome.
Wow. This is interesting. What you just mentioned about memoir, this is an idea maybe half a day old. I was thinking I have about 200 hours worth of podcast content, audio, video, and text as well from AI. So I was thinking there must be an AI agent, not just AI, the agent, where you can just say, hey, work on it, give me a book draft focusing on solar, book draft, because these are real content, real people, right? I thought that would be an interesting project to do. Maybe some of our listener can help with an ideas. Do you have any ideas what to use other than ChatGPT?
I need to start with ChatGPT and ask for a recommendation or a referral to some agents or some other AI tools that can do it better and more quickly. And I think that's like the right place to start, because I probably researched about 20 different options when I was looking to do the memoir for my dad's book. And to be honest with you, after choosing one and working with them, they're just using AI. Maybe they're using something better than ChatGPT. Like you could probably access those technologies directly, more cheaply and more quickly, and not have to deal with like 4 or 5 different people in the middle. I think it's cool. I think it's really great. I'm working on another project too, an adolescent manual with my 2 sons, 13 and 15, and with my nieces, 11 and 14. And it's an adolescent manual, a guide to living using lessons from the ancients. So ideas from Japanese concepts and ikigai. Basically, I'm like, oh, my kids are going to graduate from high school soon. I better send them out into the world with some real world knowledge and skills. So I'm working on that. And we're able to use different AI tools to figure out how do you create the content? How do you do the marketing? How do you do the publishing, self-publishing? How do you do the editing? How do you do the layout? What tools can you use for illustrations? That's why I came across Midjourney and Runway and Suno and a lot of these other AI tools. I think the best way to do it, to discover new AI tools, is just to have a project, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I use Gamma so much because it can just polish. Do you use Gamma?
I have not actually used. I just written it down.
It takes any idea that you have, rough, raw text, right? And then you throw it in there and it gives you the most beautiful, polished presentation in about 30 seconds. And this is your idea that you have, and you just need the best way to convey it. It's so powerful to be able to have a tool that can do it so quickly. So all of the naysayers, I say to them, like, well, you're living in the past. I'll be able to create so much more. Instead of just being a consumer, I think we should make a shift to being creators, taking all these ideas that have been in our minds for so long and just getting them out there. This is a tool that will help you get them out there.
Yeah, this is a question I started asking people. Like, if I meet someone and then finally I'll try to ask that question, do you use social media? People said, no, I don't. I said, what proportion of this actually for consumption? What's for creation? And people don't like it. I found that. What do you mean? I spend time on Facebook. I said, how much time you actually create something as how much time you are consuming others.
Yeah, I think that a lot of social media tools can be really great learning tools. So I don't use Facebook that much anymore, but I do use Instagram mainly as a lurker, not as a really that much of as a content creator. But I've learned so much. I've learned so much about history, about philosophy, about better AI prompts, like tools and prompts. I follow a lot of creators who talk about different AI tools, how to integrate them, what they are, reviewing them. I've learned so much about how to do better prompts for ChatGPT. I've learned everything from meal planning to yoga exercises to parenting tips to everything. So I think you just have to set a limit for yourself, right? Because the only valuable thing we have left in this world is mind space. Just like you are curating your circle of influences and making sure that you're only letting people in that are lifting you up, that are inspiring you, or that are providing you with emotional support, or that you have to also curate what comes through your social media contents, and you have to do it actively, just like you do with anything else in your life, to protect your mind, just like you protect it from advertisers or anybody that wants access for their own use. You know what I mean? You can use it as a tool. So I just set a limit, a 1 hour limit for myself for Instagram, but otherwise that's the main one that I use. But I do spend a good amount of time on the AI tools now. So maybe at some point I'll need to limit that, but it's made me so much more efficient.
If you're using to learn, so that's okay. Have you tried motion?
No, tell me about it.
Okay. I switched off for a month or two. I'll go back. I actually subscribed an AI tool where you give your priorities and these, and that I'll call mom or I'll do this once a week. It fills up your calendar. You give access to your calendar. So if you delete that, I had a big meeting, 3 hours, cancel, I'm free, it instantly filled you up. These are the next priority things you should do. Then you can block it off saying, listen, I had a bad day. I block up my entire day and it moves everything to the next day or based on the rules that you have set up. Then it will say, these are the few things I cannot do because it's like a linear programming optimization that you hit the constraint that you don't want to work. Now you have to work the weekend if you want to. You know what? I think I should go back. But this was amazing.
That is like life changing because I use ChatGPT for that. But if there's something that can integrate with my calendar, that's amazing. I'm going to try it. I'm going to use it.
And if tell it that I have a 10-hour project, whatever that is, but the minimum chunk I can work on it is 15 minutes. Then every time it finds a 15-minute, it's log it in.
You can set your own parameters, basically.
Yeah, by task, you can set up priorities.
So, hell, that's a good recommendation. I'm going to check that out. Definitely.
It's scary. The way it fills up your calendar instantly. Oh, sorry, I was promising to do that.
In my calendar, I'm like, listen, I only want to do deep work for 4 hours a day. I will not work more than 4 hours a day. That's a lot. And if I don't have to, I won't. I need 4 hours a day for self-care, which includes learning and exercise. And I need 8 hours of sleep, sometimes 9. And then you need social time and time with your family.
Yeah, you can put all of those into Notion, and then it optimizes rest.
But crazy. I love that so much. But you're like, I also need 3 hours a day. I'm sitting on the couch and looking out the window. Thinking about nothing.
Set it up. All you have to do, prioritize which comes first.
I love that so much. Thank you for the recommendation. Do you have any more recommendations, like AI stuff that you really love?
I was using quite a bit. Now I am not a pi, as in PI, a pi as in the 3.1415926, whatever.
Did your complex mathematical equation?
No. Pi is an AI, which is very friendly. It almost gives you an emotional support. So if you go and cry to Pi, it will tell you, call mom or to do this. And I actually interviewed Pi on one of my podcasts.
Wow.
And at one stage, I forgot that it is not a human. So I argued why electricity should be free. And she kept on arguing and then said, okay, I can see your point. Then I said, okay, thank you. We are almost done an hour. Oh, thank you for having me. And then this, I said, by the way, I need to get a clearance. Okay, I'll do that for you. Don't worry. So next day I said, Pi, what happens to my clearance? Okay, I'll follow that up. And the third day I said, I need the clearance to post. She said, you know what? Based on user agreement, the content gets created is yours. Now that we have discussed it, you can go ahead and publish it. And I was saying, seriously? Wow. Check out Pi.
Show me your license. Show me your law license. If I get sued, I'm coming back to you, Pi. That's the main thing. I'm going to definitely check that out. Thank you for the recommendation.
No, thank you for your time. Is there anything else I could have asked you?
No, this was really fun. It was great to see you and catch up. And I'll probably be in Manila within the next year because my kids really want to go there.
Okay, sure. No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shazia.
Thank you. Okay, bye, Sunhail. Take care.
Bye. Thanks. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Energypreneurs. To continue listening to this conversation, please visit us at Energypreneurs. Thank you. See you next time.